Let's do it. Welcome, everyone, to the pregame cheat sheet for the AFC Championship game. I'm Darren Smith, along with my co-host, Mr. Steve Walsh. Thank you so very much for joining us for the pregame cheat sheet, Steve. This is year number 5. I guess it never gets old with a chance with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. But first and foremost, your thoughts on the AFC Championship matchup. Once again, back-to-back, Cincinnati Bengals against the Kansas City Chiefs here at Arrowhead Stadium.
Well, I'm excited. I think most Chiefs fans are excited. The thing.
Are they excited or are they nervous?
No. You got to understand. They're excited to be here. Now, when the game is kicked off, I think that changes a little bit. But I think most fans, including Bengals fans, are excited just to, see a good game.
We are here live inside of the press box. It is a packed house. We actually had to move down just a little bit because it is literally shoulder to shoulder up here. But we've got everything prepared for you. We've got, of course, we want to talk about the offense, defense, special teams, do's and don'ts. Obviously, if you're watching the NFC Championship game, of course, you know that the Philadelphia Eagles and Quentin G.E.H.A are pretty happy right now. They're up 21-7 over the San Francisco 49ers. But, Steve, this is a matchup that I think you and I expected. I think when we talked last week during the divisional round, we both felt that Cincinnati would win at Buffalo and keep us from having to travel down to Atlanta. They did their job. Chiefs, of course, did their job last week, winning 27-20 over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Initial thoughts on the Bengals with what they did last week in Buffalo?
I think it was surprising. I feel like Buffalo Bills and most people, I guess, would feel the same way, that they kind of, shot themselves in the foot early. Let the Bengals get up, and they never looked back. And the thing about it in these playoffs, we've seen it in these past few weeks, is the fact that, once a team gets up by a couple of scores, it's tough for these guys to get back. And it brings me, to today. I know we'll talk about it a little later, but you've got to, if you get up and you get an opportunity to get a couple of scores in, you gotta keep your foot on the pedal and play some defense, man. And when you look at how Josh Allen played, I don't know if you remember, but early on in the season, there was always Josh Allen.
I know it all too well.
And folks were crowning him as the best player in the league. And I'm like, wait a minute. You've got to give Patrick Mahomes his flowers. And we mentioned DJ Q. I told Q this yesterday on our show. I'm saying, Josh Allen has been given flowers for no reason. He hasn't won anything. He hasn't won MVP of a season,
AFC Championship,
anything. And so it was just, it's kind of crazy to see that. But, folks want to see a quarterback like Josh Allen. He has the look that they're looking for, I guess you could say. And it just is what it is. But now people understand. I mean, we've seen what Josh Allen was without Stephon Diggs.
Yeah.
We've seen what Joe Burrow was early on in the season without Jamar Chase. So, I mean, you've got to give credit where credit is due.
These teams have met 31 times. The Bengals lead 17-14 in the all-time series. They've only met once, and that was last year in the playoffs, of course. Bengals are up 1-0. So this is the second time these two teams will have met in the playoffs. The last 3 games that these teams have played against each other have been decided by 3 points. Can't say 3 points or less. It's been 3 points that these teams, I think it was 34-31, the Cincinnati year. Last year on January 2nd, you and I were there. Of course,
was it the second?
Yeah, it was because remember we flew out New Year's Day and it was a snowstorm. So that game, and then of course 4 weeks later, they lost 27-24, and of course the Chiefs fell 27-24 in Cincinnati last month. What's going to be interesting today, of course, there's a lot of news and stuff that was coming out of last week's game with Jacksonville into this week's game. Patrick Mahomes, the ankle. We know from Andy Reid speaking to the media on Friday, he is good to go as it relates to the game today. He will be starting. No visible signs of slowing down or anything from what he did in practice this week. Travis Kelce, according to Jay Glazer, and of course from the reports the Chiefs gave, he hurt his back. He strained, or back spasms flared up on Friday. According to people who saw him come in today, said he looked fine, so we'll see. They said he was questionable. We know Travis well enough to know that he's going to play this game today because it's of what it means. So your initial thoughts on that?
Well, first, I'm going to tackle the ankle injury. I think, so I've had a number of ankle injuries, going from where I'm able to walk on it to where I'm able to just full go, knowing, that I rolled my ankle because, just early on playing basketball and low cut shoes, it just didn't work, right? So
I've had sprained ankles from putting my foot on people's behind and trying to get it out. So I know the feeling.
Yeah. So I mean, when you think of a different grade of ankle injuries, of course, Andy Reid was asked earlier this week, what grade was it? And he said, "Oh, I don't have a grade on it," which I think they were kind of, playing coy a little bit, right? Like, because
did a good job of that.
Yeah.
Because especially if you looked at how the line was moving,
and you got to remember, Patrick Mahomes had a high ankle sprain 3 seasons ago. Played through it, had a turf toe, which required surgery after the season, played through it.
And Patrick has said that the turf toe was worse than the ankle sprain.
Much worse.
And he played in the Super Bowl with that.
Exactly. And even though they weren't victorious in that game, however, you still saw that he was able to move around and do different things. And so I just think, of course, he rolled the ankle. It looked bad, but had he not continued to play last week, I think it would have swelled up on him during the game, but he continued to play, and he was able to receive treatment right after, and so because he was able to still keep that blood flow in his ankle and still stand on it and things like that, I think that helped him a lot.
A lot of people were asking me, I even had a boss from the radio station call me this morning and was asking me how should he bet. He was using his free play bets and stuff, and it's like, because of how the line, initially when Kansas City won, they won the day before, but when Cincinnati won at 5 o'clock Eastern, Kansas City was a 2.5-point favorite. Literally 5 minutes later, I think it dropped a point or 1.5. Yeah. And then by the next day, or even by the night, Cincinnati, with all the money that came in on Cincinnati, they ended up becoming a 1-point favorite, and it got as high as a 2.5-point favorite before Patrick, coming off the podium and going to the podium, said he was good to go, and the line shifted all the way back over to Kansas City. Now I think it closed at maybe Kansas City -1.5. So, yeah. I mean.
And then you look at the Travis Kelce back deal, right? I think when you see that, it makes you question, like, well, how did this happen? Look, I've had back spasms. You can wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Hey, once you get over 30, man, it's like that, And I just think him being the other statesman is just one of those things. But once you get it loosened up, and I'm sure he's had it massaged out and things. Once he gets going, I think he'll be fine.
And it does give credence to why they put Jody Fortson on the roster as well, activated from the roster. But look, man, if his back did flare up like that, he probably did pull a Mahomes, essentially probably moved into especially where they were. Look, man, got to give a kudos and a shout out to the Chiefs training staff, because Patrick himself said that he hadn't seen his family much this week, which, with the third ear, lets me know that he essentially moved into the practice facility where they could work on that ankle 24/7. And I mean, trust me, if I know Clark Hunt, if I got a $500 million investment, I don't care. Doctor's going to be working on that ankle. So I think we'll probably get anywhere between 85 to 100% of Patrick today with his mobility and being able to do what he's going to do.
And even looking at both those guys, I think a hobbled Travis Kelce is still much better than 50%, 65% of the league, right? A hobbled Patrick Mahomes is still much better than most of the quarterbacks playing in the league. So you see what he did on one foot last week.
Yeah.
To me, people can say, oh, well, he's got an injury. The bettors can say, oh, well, the injury is going to affect him. Nah, I think he'll be fine.
Look, there's a lot to dissect in today's game. You got the Chiefs, you got the Bengals, back-to-back years AFC Championship with a trip to the Super Bowl on the line. Obviously, the noise coming out of Cincinnati's win last week against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo, where some of their defensive backs, one of them in particular, trying to rename Arrowhead as Burrowhead. Now,
it's not even Arrowhead anymore. It's G.E.H.A. Field.
Yeah, Chief PR would tell you that too. Yeah. They ain't paying me. Right. But Travis Kelce did address it on his podcast with his brother, and said that it gives him bulletin board material. Obviously, a lot of the players didn't take the bait, except for maybe Willie Gay. But
and I think that was blown out of proportion.
Exactly. So how do you think now? Look, I don't mind the trash talk, and I tell people, look, man, they won 3 games in a row against the Chiefs, so to the victor goes the spoils. And now they've only won one time here or there, but 3 games in a row, 3 games in a row. I don't have a problem with them doing that. I just think that make sure you back it up, and because if they do come in and win,
Right. Of
yeah,
course.
it is what it is.
Of
And
course.
so I do think it's up to the Chiefs. Come out there, and one of the good things that I've noticed outside of the last game in Cincinnati, Chiefs have always been able to get on top first. And so I do think it's important for them to start the game off if they can, if they can get a 3 and out or at least hold them to a field goal. If they get the ball, come down, march down the field, try to get into the end zone. I do think it's very important, one, because you want people to see Patrick be able to be moving around and making some plays and stuff like that. I do have a question for you, though. How much do you think the Burrowhead comments is going to have an effect early on in the ball game?
I think rightfully so. The Bengals, not only players, quarterback, front office, fans, even the mayor, right? I think they have one leg to stand on, by beating the Chiefs 3 times in a row.
Yep.
However, when you look at it from a totality standpoint, what has that done? Like, you won the AFC Championship game, you made it to the Super Bowl last year, but what did you get?
Right.
You ended up in the same place that the Chiefs did, right? You didn't get a trophy. Of course, you may have got a game check for being in the Super Bowl, a little bit of
second place rank.
Notoriety. But if you're not first, you're last, right? So you were in Cancun on 3, right? So I just think that being said, you can say it. But you've got to win and then win big, which means if you're beating the Chiefs, then you got to make it to the Super Bowl and win. The Chiefs have won a Super Bowl. They've been in the Super Bowl twice.
Yep.
So all the trash talk early, I think Patrick Mahomes knows. He sees it. We heard Justin Reed, say all the guys in the locker room have seen it. Will they respond to it? No. But in the back of their mind, it's like, all right, y'all really think this is what y'all landed on? Okay, well, we're gonna show you. And Patrick, I think in the back of his mind, we've seen Petty Patrick before. We've seen him in Denver counting on his fingers.
Does well. No, I think that was Chicago.
Was it in Chicago? Okay, we've seen him counting on his fingers.
It's a tradition.
We've seen some of the other antics that he's done, and when questioned, when he's asked about it, he give you the PC answer, right? So I just think I think early on we're gonna see, and I really do. I think, and we'll talk about it a little later. I think these Chiefs are gonna come out here fired up, man. Just like the Bengals last week, they were asked, oh well, why'd you guys come out? Why are you playing with this chip on your shoulder? Oh, well, because they had us canceled already. They already had the AFC Championship game set up to be in Atlanta, right? So they have a chip on their shoulder, and that's the last thing you want a team to do is come out with a chip on their shoulder.
Looking at this match, and let me ask you this: how much do you think? No, you know what? I'm not going to ask you because it might be a secondary X factor. So I'll save that for later.
Okay.
But one of the biggest things in one of the biggest keys in today's game that I think is going to be pivotal, and I'll start with the defense side of football first before we get to the offense with Patrick. But when Joe Burrow has the football, how crucial and essential it's going to be for the defense and Spagnuolo to get pressure. They're able to get pressure, but they're not able to get to them. And in the Cincinnati game, the rookie George Karlaftis got one of his 6 sacks, of course, for your folk in the barbershop. I was happy that day, but he was the only player that got a sack in that game. Chris Jones, which I didn't really think about it until somebody had mentioned this week, but he's never had a postseason sack, and I didn't really think too much. Now I know, because I remember watching him have Burrows in his grasp and couldn't bring him down last year in the AFC Championship game. But I didn't realize that he doesn't have a postseason sack. So I think there's a lot of legacy talk, and we can go in a myriad different ways in which we're talking about the legacy. But I think one of them is for Chris Jones, because you're a finalist for the Defensive Player of the Year for the first time.
Right.
15.5 sacks. I think this is the second highest, I think this may be tied for his highest career total. And you might be looking for more money, contract extension in the off season.
Right.
but I don't have any play. I don't have nothing to show when it's money time for you
I agree.
in the postseason. And this is where you're supposed to make your name and make your
I
money,
agree.
make a legacy for yourself. So I think that it's going to be very important for him, not only for him but Frank Clark as well. Frank Clark doesn't have a sack against Joe Burrow, and he is number. I think he has 12 for his career
Number
in the
5.
postseason. No, he's tied for fourth,
Is he fourth? Okay.
and so if he, I think it's going to be big for both he and Chris Jones, Frank Clark and Chris Jones, that they get after. Look, man, we saw last year that they had a banged-up offensive line. Tennessee got to them 9 times, and they didn't win the game. Chiefs only got to them 1 time last year with Melvin Ingram. It's going to be very important that both players get to Joe Burrow today and bring him down hard.
I agree. Like you got a guy like Chris Jones who said that he's no longer talking to the media in 2023, right?
Yeah, I'll have to say Friday.
Yeah, I agree. But here's the thing about Chris is the fact that we're all under the impression that he's one of the best interior defensive linemen in the league.
Probably the best after Aaron Donald, but Donald's been in, so he'd probably be the best this year.
And that's where I was going with this. You look at Aaron Donald, who is if not the best defensive player in the NFL.
Yeah.
And he commands always a double team, sometimes triple teams, but he always is able to affect the game. Chris Jones, sometimes he kind of lies dormant and, oh, well, I was double teamed, or, oh, they're sending a double team and triple team at me. You still got to make something happen, right? You still got to be the best player on the field at that time.
And here's the thing. If you're being double teamed, you would think somebody else should be open, which should allow them to make the play. And again, that's where a Frank Clark. But I also think they Melvin Ingram was a great addition last year, and he did his job. He got a sack. Couldn't. But I think with Carlos Dunlap and of course because of because of Joe Mixon, they have such a great offensive support staff with Joe Burrow with the 3 wide receivers and both of the running backs that you got to give a little, but also take a little. So I don't know how much pressure you can provide without sacrificing too much of the run, because obviously you're probably gonna go with the 5 defensive backs, and so if that's the case, you're gonna be light in the box. How much, so it's gonna be incumbent on Colin Saunders along with Carlos Dunlap to be able to plug that hole up and stop the run while they're trying to get pressure. I mean, look, I don't envy Spags. I mean, I do say he's under a lot of pressure to make sure that players don't go off today. So I think I don't know if he has to go back and call Canton to get that playbook from the Hall of Fame after what he did to Tom Brady, but it's going to be imperative that he gets his players in the right position to where they're not giving up the big plays, and even if you do, you keep them. Basically, you want. And I can't remember if it was last year, or if it was in last month, where they gave up 4 field goals but 2 touchdowns. I mean, they still lost the game, but I can't remember if it was here last year in the AFC Championship game or if it was in the regular season last year. But either case, they've got to be able to keep them out the end zone.
I agree. It's you bring guys in like Carlos Dunlap. You mentioned Melvin Ingram last year. That's why you do it. And you got to remember that those interior linemen are taking pride in stopping the run. Yeah. Like when we talked to Colin Saunders on our show earlier this season, and he said, I'm taking pride in being able to stop the run, being a run stopper. Chris Jones and Dunlap and all those other guys, Frank Clark, they can get after the quarterback. Well, I want to make sure that we are known as a run stopping team. And they've been at that. And we've always been talking about the defense as a whole. Where would we like to see this defense, being a Super Bowl team, right? We've always say as long as they're middle of the road with the offense that they have, they'll be fine. And I think they're a lot better than just middle of the road. Look, they haven't peaked. When you look at the defense as a whole, they haven't peaked. I don't think. Yeah. I think they're still getting better, especially with the number of rookies they have playing. They're not rookies anymore, but the number of young guys that they have on the team, the number of guys that have not been in this game before. So I just think Chris Jones has to lead this defense. You're getting a guy like Carlos Dunlap who, talked about he wanted one of his goals this season was to have 100 sacks. He got that. Right now, what is your goal? You've got to want to get to the Super Bowl. That has to be a goal of yours. And then not only that, but you have Frank Clark, a guy who it could be on a chopping block next year. I mean, even though they restructured his deal,
Yeah.
Chris Jones is another guy that is going to want some money. I think Colin Saunders may price himself out. I really do. I think he may price himself out of being able to come back here next year. However, he could be a steal. So I just think those defensive linemen, if they got a tough task today and they have to bring it home.
Those are good problems to have, but it only matters if you win this game.
Of course.
Because, look, if I'm going to price myself out and go to the highest bidder, at least let it be because I played ball out in this game and it took us to the Super Bowl. Because, again, whatever you do today is going to be on film. Everybody's going to be able to see what you did. So,
right.
you're trying to update your resume more or less.
Yeah.
And so that's what you want to do. Let's take a quick timeout.
Yep.
When we come back, because we're still going to touch on some defense stuff a little bit later, but when we take a quick timeout, we'll switch to the offense and see what the Chiefs' offense need to do, what Andy needs to do to try to make sure this team plays 4 full quarters to get to the Super Bowl. We'll be right back. This is a pregame cheat sheet. Darren Smith along with Steve Walls live inside the Arrowhead press box for the AFC Championship game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll be right back.
Football fans, you can't spell gate without Gates, and great tailgates start with Gates sauces and seasonings. Named synonymous with mouth-watering tailgates. When you make your list of tailgate essentials, add Gates sauces and seasonings to that list. Spice up your tailgate experience with that unmistakable great taste. Available in 4 tantalizing flavors. Classic, sweet and mild, mild and hot. Find it at your local grocer, and if you don't see it, ask for it. Visit GatesBarbecue.com to purchase any of the great sauces and seasonings. Great tailgates start with Gates.
We're back. Darren Smith along with Steve Walls. We are back here inside the Arrowhead Stadium in the press box, getting you ready for the AFC Championship game featuring the Kansas City Chiefs and the Cincinnati Bengals. Of course, the winner of this game stamps their ticket to the Super Bowl. Now, Steve and I, we're going to be there regardless.
Whether Chiefs Kingdom gets there or not.
But we prefer it if Kansas City decides to, make that trip with us, because it only makes it that much better and that much more enjoyable while we're out of town. But, Steve, on the offensive side of the football, Kansas City, one of the things that I've enjoyed watching this Chiefs team play throughout the season is that they've been able to, Mahomes, as he said before the season even started, that you really wasn't going to be able to pick and choose on who to try to double up because he's going to have a plethora. And we talked about it way back in training camp that he's going to be able to kill you in different ways because he can hit you with Kelsey, but you don't know if it's going to be, MVS, if it's going to be Juju, if it's going to be McCole. Hell, most of the last month of December and even part of November, it's been Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco. So your thoughts on this Chiefs offense and how they've been playing, and what do you expect from them today against the Bengals?
It's a beautiful thing to watch, right? Like you have Patrick Mahomes, who was questioned at the beginning of the season or in doubt. A lot of folks had a lot of doubt and counted this Chiefs team out. And for a number of reasons. The main reason, though, was because of number 10. Now, I'm not talking Isaiah Pacheco. I'm talking Tyreek Hill. Right? I'm talking number 10 from the past few years, who has helped, Patrick become one of the I'm gonna say it, one of the greatest quarterbacks in the league right now.
Yeah.
And so I just think when you go out and you look at what they did, the number of moves that they made, they traded Tyreek Hill. Yeah. Got a number of draft picks. We was able to acquire Juju Smith-Schuster, was able to acquire Marquez Valdez-Scantling. You were able to acquire Justin Watson.
Yep.
A number of moves you were able to make. And they planned out. You still had McCole Hardman. Granted, he hasn't been healthy, for a number of games this season. You were able to go get Kadarius Toney, who's helped you a lot. You were able to draft Sky Moore. So you've got a number of weapons who have been able to help you this season. And I think you look at the stat sheet over the course of the 17-week season or 17-game season, and it's been kind of all over the place. You're getting McKinnon who scores 2 touchdowns in the game or 3 touchdowns in the game. You're getting Travis Kelce, who's always going to be your number one go-to, scores 3 touchdowns in the game, and you just had a number of guys who've been able to impose their will on different teams. So you don't know who they're gonna hit you with, and that's one of the things that Patrick Mahomes said early in the season is, I'm sorry to all you draft fantasy players, because no matter who you draft, they may be on one week, next week they may be off. So, and I think that's where it's been, but more or less it's always been consistent with, who your guys are. It's going to be Travis Kelce and Juju Smith-Schuster.
With us not knowing the exact percentage of mobility of Patrick in today's game, how important is it? And I like talking about how important is it? Will it be for the line? Not only which they actually love run blocking, but they don't get a chance to do it much. But how important is it in this particular game that we see a nice dose, a nice healthy dose of Isaiah Pacheco? Look, he had 12 carries last week for 98 yards. So it wasn't like, he didn't get a whole lot of touches, but the touches he had paid off.
They were.
And so
they were.
How effective do you see Pacheco doing in today's game?
We watched Pacheco early on in the season, and Darren, just as well as I do, he's come on and been the missing piece or missing link that this team has needed.
Quick point of order. Now, I remember you and I, we both talked, and it's funny because I was telling somebody this on the show over the weekend that you and I had pinpointed maybe week 5 or 7 that we thought Pacheco would be the starting running back. And I think it might have been week 4 or something, I think, in Tampa.
Yep.
But we weren't surprised to see where he is right now because we expected this.
Yeah.
Maybe I think he probably jumped in a little bit sooner than we thought he would.
Yeah.
But he's been able to handle it. Hadn't gone to his head. He's worked hard. He's kept his head down. He's done what he's supposed to do. Talk about that along with as you were finishing up your statement.
It's the aura of confidence, and I talked to Isaiah Pacheco week 1 after preseason, and I told him, I said, hey, I'm gonna be talking to you, every game. After every game, win or lose, I just want to be able to build that rapport, and so I just talk to you about football, whether you play or not. It's like, all right, man, cool. So we've developed that relationship, and talking to him after every game. Now, some games hit or miss depending on the road, how things go in the locker room and post-game press conference. So, man, missed a couple games, but more often than not, been able to talk to him. And you've seen just the confidence shoot through the roof. Now, he came in with a lot of confidence. All right, man, yeah, let's do it. So I think that confidence, I've never seen a guy come into the league and just be overly confident like he did. Being was the 6th, 7th round draft pick, right? Like he knew he was supposed to be a starter.
And he's not cocky. He just believed in his ability. And look, he's done everything the right way. One like he was just coming out. We see the movies, the program, stuff like that, where you're a hot shot. No, he just came in with his head down. He studied the playbook.
Nobody expected it, but us.
Yeah, literally, because we was like, man, the way this dude running, he went violent, and then it's like, we were thinking, man, could the Chiefs somehow maybe go back and get Kareem Hunt? It's like, because somebody asked me over Saturday whether or not I thought, I'm like, unfortunately, don't need him now because you got Pacheco and you got him on a rookie contract.
You got a guy that's proven.
That too, and he's a 7th draft pick, so you get him. He's playing for cheap. So so it's like
pennies.
Unless you're literally bringing him in for veteran, but but Kareem is the thing where he ain't trying to back up nobody right now. So it's all worked out for us.
And even kind of playing the back seat to Clyde early on in the season when Clyde was still, people were kind of wavering, teeter-totter on Clyde, is he good? Is he not? Even with him going through his fumble. Being moved to special teams kickoff return, I think he was thrown in a situation that could not have been better.
Yeah,
he's just thrown in that situation where he has to. It's kind of a sink or swim type thing, and he's definitely swimming. And granted, a lot of that I attribute to having those veterans in the room. The Jerick McKinnons. Yeah. I asked him early in the season, like, who are you talking with? Who are you, helping out? He said, hey, I'm making sure that I'm following wherever. I'm Patrick Mahomes' shadow. I'm always at Travis Kelce's house. And they've kind of trusted him And once you get Patrick Mahomes' trust, we know how that goes. He keeps i.e. Orlando Brown.
Yeah.
He keeps you around, and he's going to keep you in the mix.
We are 1 hour away from kickoff here at the AFC Championship game inside of Arrowhead Stadium in the press box. Steve Walls along with Darren Smith. This is the pregame cheat sheet. We'll be joined in just a few moments by USA Today columnist, NFL columnist, and a Hall of Fame voter. Jared Bell is going to join us to talk about today's game and a few other nuggets or whatever. Love talking to a man with this much insight and wisdom who's been covering the NFL for almost as long as Steve and I have been alive. So the man's a Hall of Fame voter, and maybe talk to him, see what we can do to get Otis Taylor into the Hall of Fame. But look, a lot of stuff. Let's look at special, and we'll circle back around because we always got to talk about our X factors. People love our X factors, but special teams. It comes down to it. I still believe in Bucker. Yeah, I think last week, the first extra point in the field goal stuff that he made, and he was perfect last week. I think that built his confidence up. Not that he lacked any, but I think it's important for him to get to that way so you don't have that hanging, especially coming to a game like this. Now I've looked at this. Bucker 75% on his field goals. He's 18 of 24 with his field goals, and he has missed. I think he's 30. Have it written down here. He is 38 of 41 for his point after touchdowns. Now their kicker, Evan McPherson, he's 40 of 44, but he has actually missed. He's a 24-29 with field goal. How much do you think, or do you think at all, it's going to come down to special teams and field goal kicking to win this ball game?
I think special teams as a whole has to be played well today. Like Andy Reid always talks about playing all three phases: offense, defense, special teams. And you look at the totality of the season for this Chiefs team. Special teams has not been on. Yeah. They've been the Chiefs' Achilles heel all season, starting with Week 3 with the fumble against the Indianapolis Colts with Sky Moore. Yeah. And it led to just a number of things. Also, you look at the injury to Harrison Butker early on in the season. They just haven't been right. You've seen the Dustin Colquitt, former Chiefs punter, kind of giving some insight on the hold of the Chiefs holder, right?
Or
it's not like it's got to be the hold. Like you see the ball, and it made me look a little like, oh, he doesn't get the laces out, i.e. Ray Ventura, right? Ace Ventura. So I just think you got to play well with special teams, man. You do, because even last week they had a couple of runbacks, man.
Yeah, that's what you can't
kickoff return. Yeah, you've got it. And I think Dave Towe, being one of the best coaches for our special team coaches in the league, you got to excel. You can't have any missteps on special teams today.
I want to take another brief time out. We may have to try to go for a minute or so, but I want to take another quick time. We're trying to get Jared Bell up here, but I do want to talk about some legacy stuff. We talked about Chris Jones, but I want to look at it on the legacy side with Patrick Mahomes along with Andy Reid. So we're going to take a quick time out. I'm going to get another headset for our guest, and we'll be right back on the pregame show, pregame cheat sheet with Darren Smith and Steve Walls here inside of Arrowhead press box for the AFC Championship game featuring the Cincinnati Bengals and your Kansas City Chiefs. We'll be right back.
Football fans, you can't spell gate without Gates, and great tailgates start with Gates sauces and seasonings. Named synonymous with mouth-watering tailgates. When you make your list of tailgate essentials, add Gates sauces and seasonings to that list. Spice up your tailgate experience with that unmistakable great taste. Available in 4 tantalizing flavors: classic, sweet and mild, mild and hot. Find it at your local grocer, and if you don't see it, ask for it. Visit GatesBarbecue.com to purchase any of the great sauces and seasonings. Great tailgates start with Gates.
Yes, sir. All right, let's see here. Oh, we got you. All right, we are back here on the pregame cheat sheet. Steve Walls, Darren Smith, along with the great Jared Bell from USA Today. Mr. Bell, first of all, thank you so much for joining us. Um, yeah, thank you. So, let me just a little bit so we get Steve in there. So, first things first, I want to ask you your initial thoughts on this matchup when it was announced after Cincinnati won. Your initial thoughts, Cincinnati, Kansas City, Electric Boogaloo doing it again.
Yeah, so my initial thought was, dang, I wanted to have their AFC Championship game in Atlanta.
Really?
Yo,
Football fans, you can't spell gate without Gates, and great tailgates start with Gates sauces and seasonings. Named synonymous with mouth-watering tailgates. When you make your list of tailgate essentials, add Gates sauces and seasonings to that list. Spice up your tailgate experience with that unmistakable great taste. Available in 4 tantalizing flavors. Classic, sweet and mild, mild and hot. Find it at your local grocer, and if you don't see it, ask for it. Visit GatesBarbecue.com to purchase any of the great sauces and seasonings. Great tailgates start with Gates.
But like I said, I believe this is going to win. And it could go football. So if he wins, more power to him. And then it shows why any show lasts.
All right, so we're back. Hopefully, y'all can see us on camera. Let me get this together right quick. See if we got us. You got us, Steve? Or this? All right, so we're back here with Jared Bell on the pregame cheat sheet. I want to ask you about the narrative if Mahomes were to lose this game. He would have hosted it 5 times in his career, advanced the Super Bowl only twice, and they gave him a 40% win rate in this. And of course, as you mentioned earlier about Burrows, if he's able to go on and win it, perhaps he's in that conversation with Mahomes. But how important is it for him to win this game versus just obviously being able to host it when you got a Super Bowl trip on the line?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. I don't think Mahomes has as much to lose as Burrow has to gain from a legacy standpoint. Okay, and I also think because we've seen Mahomes, like you say, 5 times in a row in a championship game, and so I think he has proven himself to that point. And I think Joe Burrow has proven himself to a degree as well. But when you start talking about legacy and how people are going to be looked at in history, it's an ongoing evolutionary narrative. It really is, because we know whatever happens today, Patrick Mahomes will be back next year, right? And they'll be back in the running. My goodness, I don't know if they're going to have a 6th game here in a row. Let's get through this one first. But the point being, he's young enough in his career and good enough that you don't expect that he's going to go everywhere. They may not go anywhere. They may not host the championship game next year. I guess we'll see. But they're going to be competitive. They're going to be one of those teams that when we get to January, they'll be in the mix, and we'll see where they're seated and all that stuff. But the point being, if he's healthy, he's going to be right back.
I've asked you before, and I'm curious about your thought on this, but Andy Reid, you've known him for a long. Has it surprised you how good he's gotten as the years has progressed? I mean, is it because he's got Patrick Mahomes? But I mean, has this, as you mentioned before, no Tyreek and all the injury stuff that he did, we talked about him being, maybe left out. But are you surprised at how successful he's been, even this season, being 14-3, number 1 seed, being mad because we saw the upgrades that the AFC West tried to do in the offseason, and a lot of people didn't think Kansas City would be in this predicament with Tyreek Hill being out. Are you surprised at where the team is at?
Yeah, I would say, because if you would come to me in March, April, after Tyreek, I would have said they were going to be good, right? And let's see what they do. Yeah. And we know they're going to put up on the foot. But to this point, to be number 1 seed again, no, I can't say I saw that coming. And I also thought, like a lot of people, that the AFC West was going to be, this dynamic, race.
You know, we're going to have three or four teams in the playoffs.
Yeah, and so it doesn't surprise me that since we're standing here that it has happened, because I know how good he is, how good Andy Reid, Eric Bieniemy, Travis Kelce, you know that they have a lot of foundational pieces here that, can take you to success. But given what we was taken away with Tyreek. Because how many big plays did Tyreek Hill make last year for them to get to this point?
I mean, and just the Buffalo game.
Yeah, just that one game. Yeah. And you take that and you go, well, how are they going to replace that? And then, my goodness, for McCall Hardman to end up getting hurt in November, I guess it was, because he was the guy who was going to do a lot of that stuff that Tyreek did in terms of the jet sweeps and all of that, and had a really good year up until he got hurt, and especially down by the goal line and the stuff they're doing with him. So
now, remember, I can't remember if I called you, you called me, but you had asked me what I thought maybe, I guess, the most exciting game. And I think we both somehow came to the same conclusion. It was the L.A. Chargers game in L.A. Yeah. Why did you feel that was the most explosive game for the Chiefs?
They could have lost it. They won. They could have lost, and Travis Kelce and Mahomes did some more magical things, and there was just a lot of drama. And from the Chargers standpoint, that was the game and it was in LA at SoFi Stadium. Mm-hmm. But from the Chargers' perspective, that was the game they needed to win if we're going to have carried on this conversation about, okay, let's dethrone the Chiefs. Yeah. And it didn't happen. And what we saw with the Chargers this year is that they were able to beat the teams that they were supposed to beat, the teams that had, lesser records. Yeah. But when they went up against a team that was a little bit tougher, had a little bit better record, a little bit more competitive, they fell short. Now, they always competed, but and then they go up against Jacksonville.
They give up 4 touchdowns.
So, but that game in November in LA was the most exciting game I saw this year. And the reason why I was thinking about it is because one of my buddy's wives, we were there for Christmas, and she said, boy, the Cowboys-Eagles game was like the most exciting game of the year, wasn't it? And I was like, it was okay. It was good. And then I started thinking about, okay, what was the best game this year? And that's what I came up with.
Oh, we'll see.
So, and that's the entire NFL.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people talk about the Chiefs offense, and they don't give a lot of credit to the Chiefs defense and Steve Spagnuolo and what he's been able to do. I mean, you think about, over the past few years he's been here, his defenses have started off kind of slow and then progressed and gotten better slowly. But then you think about this year, I think with all the rookies he has and just young guys, I guess they said that they're no longer rookies anymore, but just the young guys he has. Where do you see the Chiefs defense, and especially in this game today?
Yeah, still where it comes down to, okay, can they get to Joe Burrow? Mm-hmm. That means, where's Chris Jones?
Exactly.
That's what I think it comes down to, and especially this week. Not only because the Bengals have beaten you 3 times in a row, but because the Bengals have this offensive line that is, depleted.
Right.
And so if you are ever going to, make your mark and take advantage of a weakness, today is the day. And then, we know Frank Clark on the edge has been that guy, and Chris has been that guy too, just not in the playoffs. So. Right. He's got to be he's always salty, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he is.
So he's got to be a little bit more salty than normal today. So,
Steve, when I talked this week, and I told him, I said, Spags said he would like to be head coach again. And I'm like, if you want to be head coach, people going to be looking at what like I tell players, this is what you're going to be putting on tape for them to see. And now I know you got that Hall of Fame tape, that what you did with Tom Brady in the Super Bowl 2007. Mm-hmm. That's what you're going to need. You're going to need that type of play caller, because, again, as I was telling Steve last year, the week before, even though they beat Tennessee got out the Burrow 9 times, run them down 9 times. Somebody still lost. And, Chiefs only got to him 1 time and, went to overtime. So I'm like, if Kansas City's to win this game, as you said, you got to bring Burrow down. So Steve and I normally do X Factor, so we'll let you join in. But X Factor for you for the winning team, in your opinion, for today?
Well, for the winning team is for.
I don't want you. I mean, you can pick one if you want to. But
I picked the Chiefs to win, and
man, at my own heart.
I'm wondering what's up with Kelce after being put on the injury list later in the week. And I was watching him; he looked like Samuel Kelce to me. So I think that's part. So I guess the big X factor for me, regardless of the team, both teams, we just touched on it with the offensive line. How do they make up for the injury questions? Yeah. So that includes Kelsey, that includes the offensive line, that includes Mahomes. So you put all that into one thing. That's the big X factor for me.
And one thing on that Kelsey and even Patrick's injury, how much of that is a cat and mouse game where you know Patrick had the turf toe where he had to get surgery at the end of the season, and then he had, I think, 2019 where he had another high ankle sprain.
Well, Patrick, after 4 touchdowns,
after the game, and even early on this week, you see him in the press conference kind of walking around, doing his thing in practice. How much of that is, okay, Andy saying, all right, we're not going to give them anything. We're just going to make them plan for everybody.
Well, I think we all saw. You saw, I saw, they saw Patrick hobbling last week.
Right. Yeah.
And they saw how gruesome that injury was. And you saw the Cowboys guy, Pollard get hurt. And it was similar. It wasn't exact, but, it was lower leg, and then the weight goes down. So, tough break for Pollard.
Of course.
Maybe that could have happened to Patrick.
Okay.
But the point being, we saw him hobble, and in this day and age, he's going to get shot up.
Yeah.
It's going to be some painkiller stuff going on. Okay. So how does that all hold up? But in terms of cat and mouse, hey, somebody's going to test it. I would not be surprised if there was some penalty.
Yeah.
Or somebody going low or whatever, just to kind of put something else on it. So it is a factor. And, obviously, because I think back to that Super Bowl year, and he had the toe injury, but that wasn't a dominant storyline before the game,
right?
Like it was after the game.
Yeah.
And they was like, "Well, what was wrong with Mahomes?" Well, guess what?
He was still balling to me.
I was playing on 8 toes. You know what I'm saying? But they didn't talk about it a lot before the game, even though you knew that he had an issue with it, but you just didn't know what degree it was. So. You never get the truth when it comes to injuries anyway.
Yeah.
What I'm interested in, again, we talk about the Super Bowl. Chiefs came in with a makeshift offensive line, and we saw Tampa Bay dominated. So perhaps we'll see whether they can do that today. Steve, what's your X factor on offense for today?
On offense, I would say it's Patrick Mahomes. I mean, you've got to. He knows what happened last year, where they were dominant in the first half, and then second half they couldn't get anything. And so I just think he has to make sure that he has his team ready to play, and that he keeps his foot on the gas.
I'm going to go with Andy Reid, and I'm going to go with Eric Bieniemy as well. Obviously, there's reports that Eric Bieniemy is in the running for the head coach of the Colts, but it seems like it might try to go back to Jeff Saturday. Then as an OC, I don't like the whole lateral stuff going, as the Baltimore.
I saw the Ravens.
Look, that's a conversation for another day. Yeah. Radio Row, something like that. But I'm going with Andy Reid because, again, you're the leader, man. You lead this team. I know we put a lot of the blame on Patrick, and Patrick did admit he said he choked last year in the second half. But as the head coach, you've got to make sure that your guys are not only ready to play, but whatever adjustments need to be made halftime throughout the game or live in action during the game, you need to be able to make it. Even if that means if the defense ain't doing something, I need to see what your defensive chops are. I know you kind of give Spags autonomy, but you're still the head coach, and so. I would like to think that he, I'd say he's the X factor because, again, as I said, it's one thing for Tom Brady and the Patriots to come in 2018, first time hosting the AFC Championship game, and they win on a walk-off because you don't get the ball back, you don't get a chance to touch the ball in overtime, and they leave with the Lamar Hunt Trophy, and you gotta, Clark Hunt's in there, we got to see him all set. The next 2 years, they win it, then they come down, they lose it last year in overtime.
Right.
Can't afford to lose it again.
You know what? To your point, you mentioned Spagnuolo and his desires to be a head coach.
Yes, sir.
Let's look at the other defense coordinator, Lou Anarumo, and it plays right into what you're saying about Andy Reid and Bieniemy and how they scheme this thing. The one thing that Anarumo has done so well is adjusted during the game.
Yes.
They went like the first 8 games this year without giving up a single point in the second half, and those and they've given up the fewest points in the second half in the fourth quarter of the season, and so that just kind of shows kind of how they roll when it comes to in-game adjustments. And that game last year when Kansas City's up 21-3, it could have been either 24 or 28-3.
Exactly.
But when they got to the second half and in the fourth quarter, they had no answers. And so that has been the MO of this Bengals defense. And, you talk about people getting head coaching, opportunities or interviews. That's a guy who has
Hadn't had any.
Yeah, hadn't had any. So same thing. It's pretty crazy sometimes how this works out. But you talk about resume tapes for a defensive coordinator.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean,
That's a
especially with what they did to Josh Allen just last week. Defense.
I mean, we talked about it. I would say it's Chris Jones. You've got to, being the leader of the defense, you've got to make sure that you get after Joe Burrow. You do. You got to put him on the ground. If not, you got to have a lot of pressure to make it easier on your back end, because we know Joe Burrow where he wants to go, Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I mean, it's no secret. So you've got to make sure that you get after Joe Burrow.
I've been big, and I've said all week that I thought the man under the most pressure, even more so than any readers, is Steve Spagnuolo. Because, again, the first time you played Cincinnati, Jamar Chase as a rookie burned you for 221 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Of course.
And, I mean, it was, 3rd and 37, and they somehow got a first down in Cincinnati, because you did all out blitz. Like, come on, what's going on? Again, we saw what happened in the championship game last year, and then they had the lead in Cincinnati last month, but Travis Kelce had to strip fumble, and they really couldn't do anything after that. So I want to see, what is it that you focus on first? Are you going to focus on the run and Joe Mixon, or are you going to try to make sure that Jamar Chase doesn't beat you? Because they got enough options. Like Kansas City has enough options. I want to see if you can call the game of your life defensively to make sure that this team can advance.
And you cannot. I will not stress that enough. You cannot leave your guys out there on that island one-on-one with Jamar Chase. You can't.
When you said that, that's exactly what I thought. Like, no, take Chase. If you got one or the other, try to deal with him. And hopefully the rest of them can deal with.
I agree.
So before we get out of here, Steve, who's your winner?
I got the Chiefs. I think they're going to come out here and try to be dominant. You look at how the last 3 games have unfolded, where the Chiefs get out early. I think it's not going to be any different today. I would say if I'm giving you a score, I would say 31-24 Chiefs.
Yeah, obviously, I think the Chiefs are going to win.
Yeah,
it's better for us.
Yep.
That's where my money's going to. So everybody knows I like the sports book. So I do have the Chiefs win this game. Like you, I got to have a 7-point, even though the last 3 games have been a 3-point margin. That makes me nervous. So I've got to budget out at least a touchdown. But again, if Kansas City can get up like they did before, I'm almost positive they're not going to make the same mistake that they did last year by doing whatever they were doing. I think even if they get down to the goal line that's close to halftime, I think they'll take the points versus trying to force it in, no matter what Patrick wants to do this time around. Steve, before we get out of here, thank you so much. But Bear, we'll let you stay with us right quick, but let everybody know who styles you, gets you tailored, and where they can catch us out on Monday night.
Remember, you can catch us on Monday night at Soiree Steak and Oyster House, 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. Join myself, Darren Smith, Uncle Sean Tyler, also DJ Q. We're going to be talking all Chiefs. Win or lose, we'll be there, Soiree Steak and Oyster House on 18th and Vine. And also, you can catch my friends at Dillard's, Zona Rosa. Make sure you go out there and talk to Heather in the men's department. She'll take care of you.
And unfortunately, we also got to talk about the Philadelphia Eagles because DJ Q's not going to.
Yeah, we will.
We'll have to talk about them as well. But I want to thank, as always, Todd White and Todd's Clothing and Taylor Suits, who keeps me looking game day fit. And so he's located 2 different locations, 20th and Broadway, downtown Kansas City. Also, you can find him out at the Ward Parkway Mall. Get you some great suits. My guy Jared tells me I got a brand. I can't wear nothing but suits when we get to Phoenix. It's gonna be hot out there. I still got to wear a 3-piece suit. So
60 degrees though. 60 degrees.
Okay, cool.
Not summer Phoenix. Okay,
yeah.
Still.
But I still have to wear a suit though, according to this man. That's a brand I have. But Jared, really want to thank you so much for your wisdom and everything. I know. Can't wait. I know you got your Hall of Fame bout you got to do when you get the things you get to run. But one question: what do we got to do to get Otis Taylor in there?
Yeah, that's a seniors committee question. Unfortunately, not on the seniors committee. His name has come up. The conversation's been there, and there's just so many guys who are in that pool from that era, and it gets tougher and tougher because as the years go on, even though we put in like 5, 7 people and 8 people every year, so many guys that have played, the NFL is 100 years old. They didn't start the Hall of Fame until 1963.
Of course.
And so there's that backlog, man. So there's a lot of deserving players, especially from the AFL, that haven't had their justice. So I'm with you. I think he should be there.
It seems like they wait till everybody's gone and passed away, man, before they give them their flowers in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, that's not how you want it to be.
Right.
No doubt. No doubt about it.
Well, look, thank you so very much for joining us this season. Steve and I, of course, follow us post-game. We'll bring you our post-game coverage from the podium in the locker room, and then our post-game show, win or lose, preferably a win. We'll give you a post-game show after the game. And again, join us tomorrow night down to Soiree Steak and Oyster House from 6:30 to 7:30, where we'll talk and get you all ready for Super Bowl 57. And then join Steve and I, along with Jared. He'll be running around somewhere in Phoenix. In a couple of weeks, we'll be in Phoenix on Radio Row for our respective stations, talking to everyone. Whoever sits down with us, we'll talk to them, and we'll get their prediction on the Super Bowl. So thank you so much for joining us this season. We'll be back again for the pregame cheat sheet with Steve Walls. I'm Darren Smith. Thank you so much for joining us, and our special guest, Mr. Jared Bell of USA Today. Make sure you subscribe and read his work. We are out of here.
Appreciate the love, man.
Anytime.
Football fans, you can't spell gate without Gates, and great tailgates start with Gates sauces and seasonings. Named synonymous with mouth-watering tailgates. When you make your list of tailgate essentials, add Gates sauces and seasonings to that list. Spice up your tailgate experience with that unmistakable great taste. Available in 4 tantalizing flavors. Classic, sweet and mild, mild and hot. Find it at your local grocer, and if you don't see it, ask for it. Visit GatesBarbecue.com to purchase any of the great sauces and seasonings. Great tailgates start with Gates.